Welcome to Coleman Report Live. I'm Bob Coleman. We're talking Main Street and the small business lenders who help it grow. Katie, welcome. Lance, welcome. We have a ton of stuff today. Joseph, Michael, go back to the questions. Today is answering questions. Please send your questions to Joseph and we will get those answered. Of course, you can always use the GoToWebinar dashboard to ask questions. And those are for those of you who are new, we always seem to get a couple new people every day, and thank you for your support. These certificates download, keep track of them. It answers the question what you're doing for training for both your regulators and SBA. And who else, Lance? You mentioned someone else was asking the other day about those.
Even in bank or lending institution internal audit, sometimes will ask you for how you're training your SBA staff. So there are a number of groups that are going to be interested in how you're training your SBA staff.
And just to be clear, we're not sanctioned by SBA. SBA doesn't sanction any of the trade organizations, whatever. But whatever you do, whether it's a SCORE workshop or an SBDC workshop, they offer great training. Just keep track of those. I think even a Chamber of Commerce meeting where someone's talking about, these PPP loans or whatever, I would just keep a log of all this stuff because that is of critical attention, especially after the Great Recession. A lot of the bank training departments, the lender training departments were decimated and they haven't all come back. So we are happy to fill that void. Hey, Lance, we're going to do your webinar tomorrow on loan forgiveness, and I understand there's an update.
Yeah, Bob, it's great. We're going to talk about the new 3508 EZ, which, when you look at the statistical information and you look at the certifications, a majority of your PPP borrowers will actually use that form. We're going to discuss it, what information is needed. Also, there was some guidance that came out about what the lenders are expected to review in the forgiveness process, and I just added that information today. We still do not have direct clarity on how you actually submit it to SBA, but at least we know at this point what we're expected to review, and we're going to cover that. I think for those involved in the PPP lending process, forgiveness is getting ready to start, so it'll be a nice primer for getting ready for PPP forgiveness.
Very good. Let's go to the poll questions. Oh, of course, we have to push our training. Hey, and take advantage of our franchise NAICS reports. Those are available. It's updated through the end of 2019. And Katie's going to be talking about this, but do you think the deadline for PPP applications for Main Street should be extended?
Well, there's plenty of money left. I know you guys saw the report that came out today. I was thinking it was hovering closer to $100 billion, but it's up over $120 billion, I think, that is still available. So my response is yes.
Oh, interesting. 2/3 say no. Katie, why did we ask this question? What brought this about?
So yesterday, the SBA administrator went to a small roundtable meeting in West Virginia, and they were discussing what to do with the remaining funds and also some problems with West Virginia only receiving a small portion of the PPP loans, and there was still a significant amount of small businesses that probably tried to apply early on and didn't end up getting in the first round and were too scared to apply again. And so there was just a small amount of businesses there who had received it. And she was kind of discussing that with their representatives and trying to find out what would be ideal for moving forward, and indicated that she would be a proponent for extending the PPP application deadline to some other date. Now, we're probably going to talk about it a little later, but P4 would do that, so possibly she's supporting that.
Did she talk about a time frame? Are we talking 30 days, 60 days, or just extend it till the money runs out, Katie?
She did not list any specific date. She was just confirming that she was looking into that and considering it. I know the P4 program, the P4 program would extend it through December 30th. So if that's what she was indicating, then that would be at least December 30th.
Well, obviously, Lance, this is a moving target. New information is hitting every day. That's why we're doing our show. We're in interesting times, Lance.
Yeah, well, the thought process that everybody that wanted a PPP loan got it because it is true to an extent, but not true because of what Katie said. There were a number of borrowers in states that may have applied in the first round, didn't get it, and then additional information came out, and they were a little anxious about it and didn't apply in the second round, which the second round has had more than adequate funding. But additional guidance has came out since then that probably would make those people comfortable in applying for a PPP loan.
Go ahead, Lance.
I'm a fan of extending the deadline. There are a lot of banks. A lot of banks pulled out of PPP when the Paycheck Protection Program Flexibility Act came out and made the terminal loan 5 years. Some banks pulled out and quit doing, or some financial institutions pulled out. But there are plenty. We've had this poll question, Bob. 70% of our people are still doing PPP loans. I'm a fan of extending it to September 30, the end of SBA's fiscal year.
Yeah, or at least until the money runs out, because I think we've shown that there's more of a supply than there's a demand at this point in time, and there are still small businesses who can take advantage of that and take care of their employees. I mean, what are we at? 30 million unemployed in the country? It's sad.
And the challenge, Bob and Katie will talk about P4 in a little bit, but the challenge is some of the people who got a PPP loan may need another to survive.
We asked this question earlier, I think maybe Monday, but we still want the changing. Everything's changing, and so what are you doing? Are you accepting applications time, or are you waiting for more guidance?
Bob, I did a scan of some of the larger SBA lenders in the country. Most have a discussion of PPP forgiveness, but they have a statement that says guidance is changing daily. At some point in the near future, we will have a PPP forgiveness portal. I
don't think there's a wrong answer. I think it's fine just to get a jump on this. For those of you who said no, because we understand there's going to be further guidance. So I don't have a problem with either one of those answers. Lance, do you have a better opinion about that than I do?
No, absolutely not. In fact, smaller participant lenders who, may not have done thousands, but may have done hundreds, it's okay to start accepting forgiveness apps. I think the institutions that have not yet opened it up, Bob, are the ones that are going to work on an electronic portal for businesses to submit their forgiveness apps.
And fun stat, what is the number one industry that has been receiving these PPP loans? And I'll give you a hint. Those are the top 5. I believe those are the top 5. Oh, right. No, they're not. They are the top 5.
The top 5 by loan amount.
By loan amount. Okay, just
something kind of interesting, and I'll go into it later if we have time, but a certain industry is definitely more heavily linked toward the jobs retained because of the PPP loans. And there's some great stats on that later.
Yeah, that was a red herring. The combination food service actually is 5. Healthcare is number 1, right, Katie?
Healthcare is number 1 by loan amount. The accommodation and food services, what might be throwing people off is that is the one that has helped retain the most jobs and actually created some jobs last month.
So anyway, I thought that's a fun chart. And here's the chart if you want to look at the numbers a little bit more closely. But let's get to the questions. Do we have the chart, Michael? Oh, it's after the questions. Okay. Here we go. Lance, hot seat. Ready? Are we going to give you a buzzer?
Yeah. Well, first of all, EIDL loans, they are a different animal, and they're managed by the Office of Disaster Assistance at SBA. I did not think collateral was going to be a requirement on an EIDL loan, and the only way to get an answer about collateral being required would be to call the disaster centers for clarity on that. I don't think they're prohibited from taking collateral, but the only way to get a clear answer on this, there's a disaster office in El Paso, there's one in Birmingham, there are a couple more scattered throughout the country. Get on SBA's website, get their phone number and call them. Be prepared to wait a while, but that's the only way you're going to get an answer on that.
Next
I've got
question.
to tell you about the people I know that got EIDL loans or applied. It was a fairly confusing process.
Lance, what was the dollar amount of your customers who got the IDEA loans?
One was
Average.
10,000, one was 300. They were all over the place.
Oh, okay. Michael, next question. Can the EIDL loan proceeds be used as a down payment? We've answered that, right?
This is a really gray area. EIDL loan proceeds are supposed to be used for working capital purposes. A down payment on purchase of a property, that's incredibly gray, an incredibly gray area for me. My personal recommendation would be no on this. Things like payroll, utility bills. I even had a customer say they wanted to buy a new sign for the business to let people know that they were open. I think that's perfectly acceptable.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I do not think that a down payment on a new piece of property would be an acceptable use of the EIDL loan proceeds.
Next question.
Well, the forgiveness process, and guys, if you're interested in it, make sure and sign up for tomorrow's webinar. Bob, you know me, the shameless plug. But the safe harbors given, there's still some requirements on the lender's part in reviewing the forgiveness application. Now, a lot of it still relies on the borrower's certifications. There's a really small amount of lender liability, but most of the reliance on the calculations and the information contained is on the borrower.
Lance, Vicky, and Sandy have weighed in and said every loan that they've done they've seen over 25K does require collateral. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
And if you want the number, Russell gave us the number. Michael, type that into the webinar, go to the dashboard webinar. Let's go to the next question. This is more of a comment. Thanks for talking about MSLP. Obviously, we don't have all the details, but this is something that we are going to cover extensively, even though it's what I would call middle market. I think the employee threshold's up to 1,000. It is still available down to $250,000, right, Lance?
Bob, yes. One thing I'd like to see us do tomorrow or Thursday is have a poll question to the institutions. Who's going to participate? Because I have heard had conversations with banks that have said, no, we're not going to do it.
Yeah, I think we did a poll question. He may have been out that last week. It was around 20. Don't hold me to this. It was in the 20% range. But Michael, make a note and we'll ask that question tomorrow. And especially if PPP goes away, this will be an option. Next question, D. I'm sorry, we already got D. Next question. Go ahead, Katie. What's going on with P4?
So P4 was officially introduced by Cardin and several others in the Senate on Thursday. So that's going to be for small businesses with less than 100 employees that have had a 50% revenue loss or greater. And in that situation, they may get a second PPP loan. The other thing P4 does is it extends the deadline. It's currently at the end of this month through to December 30th, and then gives the SBA the ability to extend that even further if necessary.
Very good. Thank you very much for that. Obviously, we will cover that as more and more guidance hits every day. Paul says, We're extending debt relief past September 27th. What's going on with that, Lance?
Well, technically, your 6 months worth of payments made by SBA are only on loans that are fully dispersed prior to September the 27th. So a SBA loan that you close today and fully dispersed today would get 6 months worth of payments from the CARES Act, assuming funds are still available, and I think funds will still be available. I think the biggest challenge would be, for instance, I've got a construction loan that is closing on, next week, and it will not be fully dispersed prior to September the 27th, so it will not be able to take advantage of the CARES Act payments. So there are a number of institutions throughout the country who are working with their customers. You know, you may have a borrower who did an SBA loan 2 years ago, and they drew 99% of the funds and say there's $500 left to disperse, and that's reflected in SBA system. They will not get the 6 months payments. As a participant lender, you're going to need to go in and disperse that money to them as working capital or whatever to get it fully dispersed. And as long as you get those taken care of prior to September the 27th, they will get the debt relief payments from SBA.
Lance, we continue to get a lot of questions on this, and I know we have some in here. Maybe it's the next one up. Go ahead, Lance.
One other thing I wanted to point out, when we talk about fully dispersed, guys, on the express revolving lines of credit, the first disbursement is fully dispersed. So if, let's say you've got a $75,000 express revolving line of credit, you need to go ahead and make they need to take a working capital draw, some kind of draw as soon as you close it, and then they will get the 6 months worth of payments.
Good point. Next question. Maybe this is this is a great observation from Tammy. And Tammy, we were unclear. There is a secondary market for PPP loans, but we should have been clear that you sell these at a discount. So
it's not like selling.
It's important information we should have clarified. But yeah, you could sell these to another party. They will service them. They'll process the forgiveness. And then you need to do a calculation. Is it worth it for you to do it or not? So Tammy, we're both correct. There's a secondary market, but it's not, it's at a discount. So thank you very much for calling us on that and making sure we're giving accurate information.
Yeah, Tammy, that's a great point. There's certainly not a premium selling them. I've heard different fees, but if you want to sell your PPP portfolio, there is a cost associated with it.
Yeah, very good. That's important. Larry asked the question, hey, what's happening? Do you think we can extend that fully dispersed deadline beyond September 27th, Lance? You were talking about that construction.
I really hope they would. I wish they would extend it to the end of the year because, again, Bob, if you close a multi-disbursement loan today, if there's a construction element, it may not fully disperse, or it certainly has a great chance of not fully dispersing prior to September the 27th. And guys, you want to be careful. I've heard this, that people did this to sell loans in the secondary market, and it's not acceptable. But they'll do a multi-disbursement loan, fully disperse it into like a escrow account, and then fund the construction. You can't do that, guys. SBA is not going to allow that. The loan has to be fully dispersed. So those conversations need to take place now prior to closing the loan. And it needs to be clear to the borrower. I'm sure they've read something about this, but, if you've got a construction loan on a building, it's not going to fully disperse most likely prior to September the 27th, and that borrower needs to be told, because it doesn't fully disperse, you will not get the CARES Act payments.
I'll follow up the conversation we had earlier, which said, hey, feel free to reach out to your representative, to your senators, to the small business committees, both the House and the Senate. And if this is an issue that's important to you, go ahead and send them a letter, because they do want feedback and they're interested in that. And again, they don't want the form letters, but in this case, Larry, if you send it, and it's a one-pager. This is not we don't want a full 10-page. One page say, hey, this is why this is important. This affects ABC Corporation, which employs X amount of people in your district, Congressman.
Well, and I think something that's important to know, let's say you close the loan in January, Bob, for construction, and they're going through the disbursement project. That conversation needs to be had with that customer. Hey, any way we can get it fully completed prior to September the 27th and get it fully dispersed, because it'll be a great economic benefit to that borrower if it does.
Okay, we're going to hold the rest of the questions over, and we got some other here. Let's go directly to, real quickly, Katie, what's going on with, what did the administrator say in the West Virginia Small Business Roundtable?
So we kind of already went over the major points there. She just specifically said that she was a proponent of extending the deadline for applying, and that she wanted to focus on helping more small businesses in communities that had applied for loans earlier on and are now afraid to apply again because the funds ran out.
Very good. And go to the next slide, Michael, very quickly. I know we're over our 20-minute limit here, but we'll talk about this a little bit more. This is interesting. In fact, I talked to a lender, a smaller lender, where they $600 million bank, and they got $300 million in core deposits from all the PPP loans they've done. So that's those are pretty amazing, positive impact to your financial statement. And we'll talk about lender match as well. Hey, Katie, Lance, thank you so much. Lance, we look forward to your webinar tomorrow. Just shoot me an email if you want to register. We'll do all the paperwork, bob@colemanreport.com. And thank you for joining us today for the Coleman Report Live and for supporting America's Main Street, one entrepreneur at a time.
Have a great afternoon.